this week we want to look at a lot that has happened in reference to climate issues in the last week, especially as electoral processes warm up. We're in the midst, as you all know, of an electoral year, and that means we get a lot of things being said that are sometimes not altogether reasonable or rational, but are said in effect to garner votes. And that's our problem in a way. We're seeing a very dramatic case of it here in this next week. On Tuesday, there's going to be a primary of one of the major parties, the Republican Party, in the state of Florida. And you would think that the state of Florida particularly would focus the attention of some of the candidates on the big issues facing humankind, because climate change is going to mean a great deal for the state of Florida, and everyone in the state of Florida is starting to realize that. So you'd expect that, in a way, there'd be some appreciation of that in the different candidates, and some sort of statement by some candidate that they're concerned about that issue and have policies to deal with it. But in addition, we have other problems that, in effect, make us ignore the state of the climate. So part of what we're going to do here is look at this whole question of, in effect, climate change in the state of our disunion. Because what's happened is that we're getting to discuss a national carbon policy in the form of an energy policy, but we're kind of missing the point about climate change. So the climate crisis is taking the back seat to the carbon crisis, or the carbon access crisis. Can we get more carbon? And the result is it's losing out altogether. We learned this past week on the 19th, actually, that there was a big breakthrough on the Keystone decision by the administration. They, in effect, rejected the Keystone pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline, under the deadline threat of the GOP. The Republicans had, in effect, imposed a deadline in order to pass some of the legislation last year to keep their country moving. And they had put on a rider that Obama had to decide by a particular time about the Keystone pipeline. And he, in fact, did decide, but he rejected the current route proposed for the Keystone XL pipeline. But what next is not at all clear. What comes after that rejection? Will the pipeline take a different route? Will it, in fact, just be diverted out of Canada in another direction altogether towards the west coast, and perhaps be sold as tar and petroleum eventually to China instead of through the United States? All of these are open questions. And Bill McKibben, who headed the campaign against the Keystone XL, had a lot to say about it and felt some sense of victory, as did Jane Cleave, who was executive director of Bold, Nebraska, that also joined in for a very big opposition to the Keystone XL pipeline because of the way it would intrude upon potentially the underground aquifer that controls a lot of the agriculture in the area. Let's see how Democracy Now! Covered it.
For the environmental movement, the Obama administration has rejected the Keystone XL tar sands oil pipeline. President Obama said the administration denied TransCanada's application for the 1,700-mile Canada to Texas pipeline because there was not enough time to review an alternate route that would avoid the Ogallala aquifer in Nebraska in November. In November, Obama announced he would put off any decision on approving Keystone until 2013. But Republicans responded by inserting language into the payroll tax cut bill in December to force a decision on the pipeline by the end of February. Wednesday's decision, however, does not mark the end of the fight over the pipeline. TransCanada has already announced it will reapply for a permit based on a different route. This is White House Press Secretary Jay Carney.
There is a proper process that has existed for many years and many administrations by which a project like this is reviewed and a permit is either granted or denied. Because of concerns expressed by numerous stakeholders, including the Republican governor of Nebraska, it was decided that an alternate route through Nebraska was necessary. The choosing of that alternate route has not even been completed yet. The State Department, which conducts and oversees this multi-agency review process, made clear at the time in December that inserting this extraneous provision as in an attempt to get a political victory, because for some reason extending a tax cut to 160 million Americans wasn't victory enough, the Republicans put in jeopardy a process that should be immune from politics, should be conducted on the basis of pragmatic and considered analysis, and tried to hijack it.
On the campaign trail, Republican presidential hopeful Newt Gingrich criticized Obama's decision.
This is a stunningly... I tried that at myself. It's just too hard. Look, let me be honest. This is a stunningly stupid thing to do.
Well, I think you get the idea here. The Republican candidate here in this Florida contest, which is going to take place on Tuesday, is calling the XL pipeline decision by Obama stunningly stupid. Now, it's interesting to see how he puts that forward. He's not alone. Mitt Romney also has his sort of priceless commentary on this, and it's worth reviewing what they both, in effect, backed themselves into doing. They both seem to gang up on the decision as something that was ill-considered. Take a look at the way Romney put it at one point.
Let's go back and talk about first what you do to get the economy going. And of course, we've spoken time and again about our tax code that's out of alignment with other nations. We've spoken about the fact that regulation is overwhelming us, that we need to take care of our energy resources and become energy secure. We have to open up markets, and we have to crack down on China when they cheat. But I'd like to talk about something else that President Obama has been doing. He's been practicing crony capitalism. And if you want to get America going again, you've got to stop the spread of crony capitalism. He gives...
Well, this is a very interesting use of words. Stop crony capitalism. The term became famous during the previous administration of George W. Bush, but apparently Romney wants to use it to gang up on eventually his run against Obama if he thinks he's going to win. Take a look at the way he puts it here.
General Motors to the UAW. He takes $500 million and sticks it into Solyndra. He stacks the labor stooges on the NLRB so that they can say no to Boeing and take care of their friends in the labor movement. You go across the country with regards to energy, because he has to bow to the most extreme members of the environmental movement. He turns down the Keystone Pipeline, which would bring energy and jobs to America. This president is the biggest impediment to job growth in this country, and we have to replace Barack Obama to get America working again.
Let's go back.
Well, that's the representation of it in that campaign, that he's killing jobs here, and we've got to replace him because things like the XL pipeline would have created jobs, and he says, and therefore we've got to get rid of a president who does this, and get rid of crony capitalism. A very interesting attack on crony capitalism from a party that's been famous for it in the past few years. Let's take a look, though, on the issues at hand beyond the predictable responses from political candidates. If you want to hear Newt's stunningly stupid statement again, let's hear it in full, because it's actually pretty extraordinary the way he's trying to make political hay off of this.
The president has apparently vetoed the Keystone Pipeline. Now, This is a stunningly... I tried that at myself. That's just too hard. Look, let me be honest. This is a stunningly stupid thing to do. Obama's decision is stupid on 3 grounds. There's no better word for it. These people are so out of touch with reality, it's as though they were governing Mars. Stupidity number 1. We need the jobs. Now maybe when they're unemployed in November, they'll figure out jobs matter. But what kind of a president kills 20 to 50,000 construction jobs plus a 30 to 50 year process of processing in Houston, the largest petrochemical center in the world, and the ports of Houston and Galveston making money, shipping, all of that thrown away so Barack Obama can appease a group of left-wing environmentalists in San Francisco? It is just...
Okay, well, he gets the representation of appeasing the left-wing environmentalists in San Francisco. He seems to forget that this went through Nebraska, and the Republican governor of Nebraska was outspoken against it. There seemed to be a slippage in facts here, but let's see who is stunningly stupid. I mean, if you look at the issues here, not just the rhetoric on a campaign trail that you can get people to stand up and raise their fists about, let's look at the bigger issues here. The Republicans have for several years now, and especially in the recent era, since about August, have been coming out against the science, basic science of climate change here. Now, one of the reasons to oppose the Keystone XL pipeline was not just that it was going to pollute the underground aquifers through any damage that may have occurred, but that using the oil that came out of that pipeline would essentially mean game over for the climate, according to Jim Hansen, the climate scientist. And apparently that doesn't slow down the entire Republican Party at this point. But there will be consequences of this blatant ignorance, especially in Florida. Florida is very, very vulnerable to any changes in climate. And the one that's coming with heating up of climate, most dramatically, of course, is